Sometimes, it's crazy to say, but sometimes your goals are more important than your friends. He makes 300,000, he makes 200,000. Oh my gosh, that's so much money. Hey grandma, I'm dropping out of college. Excuse me if I get emotional, but she literally started crying. She's like, what are you doing?
How long it took you to make the first $1 million?
Made $20,000 his first week. I think the main thing is delayed gratification.
The opportunity's real.
What's up guys, my name is Jake Shumway, this is Moose Browning.
How's it going?
We wanted to fill you guys in and take us through our journey with SPCO and how we're gonna sell for over 100 million in the next 2 years.
Let's go.
Let's go. So I remember I got a call from Blake Rustan, one of my friends from back in Tucson, and he sent me a picture and he was holding probably $2,000 in his picture, and he's like, hey man, I just made this selling solar. And I was like, okay, that's cool. He's like, hey, I want you to meet my friend Moose. He sells solar. He just made over 1.6 million in 6 months. And I was like, okay. So I called Moose, and you set up a meeting with me. And I remember it was like a week and a half after. And what ended up happening was we got together, I walked in, and there's like 5 guys, and you're like, hey, he makes 300,000, he makes 200,000, he makes 400,000, let's go to lunch. So we ended up talking, and long story short, I met with you, and I just remember we were sitting across the table, and you're like, hey, what are you doing? I was like, well, I'm gonna make 100K, and I'm gonna graduate, I'm gonna go into finance and make all this money. And I just remember when I sat down at the table, you were sitting across from me. Do you remember how it went at all?
I remember bits and pieces of it.
Just bits and pieces? Yeah. So we were sitting across from each other, and I remember you're like, hey, here's what we'll do. I'll give you a check for $15,000, and you can cash it at the end of the month if you don't make the money. Just walk away.
And what happened?
Well, I was like, well, that's 5 times as much money as I've ever made before. So I ended up when do I show up?
Yeah. And at the time you were going to school, doing different things, kind of testing the waters, coming and going. It's funny because I get a call from Garrett, Blake's dad. He's like, dude, I got the stud I want you to meet with. His name's Jake Shumway. He's going to school. We've known him for a long time. He's going to show up at the meeting on this date. Just introduce yourself, see what his situation is, see what it's like, and kind of move forward on that. So I remember going to eat. I think we went to Yogi's.
Yep.
A little teriyaki chicken and rice. And the thing is from where I come from is I've been doing this now for 20 years. And as we recruit people and bring people on this journey with us, it's about how can we impact their life? How can we help instruct them to be better versions of themselves and to expedite the process of what I feel took me to be successful and kind of shorten that time for other people. And so it's interesting, we've talked a lot about this through that process of solar and life and how long it took me to make a first $1 million, how long it took you to make your first $1 million, and how long it's going to take people that come work with us to make $1 million. That's kind of some people think it's a lofty number or something that we just throw out, but the opportunity is real, right? So when we first started going out, right, walk through that first day of on the doors. Mm-hmm.
So I remember my first day, you had said, hey, come watch me knock. We showed up, you knocked 30 minutes. It was 3 people. I remember the first one was just freaking pissed off, aggressive guy. The second one and the third one were both appointments. So I remember you knocking, you're like, hey, my name's Moose Browning, Jacob Browning, blah, blah, blah. And then I was like, wow, dude, he really just set an appointment for supposedly $5,000 to close tomorrow. And I just remember after that, you left me, and I was just like, oh crap. And now it's my turn.
Here's the utility bill. Here might be an ID badge and a shirt. So
I remember here's the utility bill, here's a Sales Rabbit login. And I remember going to my first door and I knocked, and I was literally just like, hey, and I just blanked. And then I just remember hey, blah, 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 and I just started rambling on, and then he was just like, not interested. And he slammed the door. And I was like, okay, so that's what not to do. Don't blink. So I remember the second one, the third one. Long story short, I think I got 8 leads in my first day because I knocked 7 hours, whatever it was, right? And what I figured out is that it's not so much how you say, it's just like, or not what you say, it's how you say it.
Yeah, the tonalities, those types of things. So that was kind of like October to November. You're kind of dibbling, dabbling. And then you first started full time, if I remember correctly, like February, right? So as you went from that kind of testing the waters out, figuring out how it works, how to operate, what kind of expedited and what were like the expectations from that, February of 2022 to the end of to December of 2022? Because I think that's something that separates you, Shumway, from a lot of people that come into the space. Right? I think some people come in the space and they dibble, they dabble. Some work out, some don't work out. Some people make $1,000, some people don't make anything. But there was a paradigm shift that kind of took place with you from that February to December that allowed you to set the rest of the story up.
So I think number one was that I was part-time selling solar before while in college and working. And I remember just trickling in a couple M1s, and then I got like my first install and it was like 12 grand, whatever it was. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so much money. And there's a real defining moment for me was I remember my grandma dropped off a birthday card for me. It had like $40 in it or something. And she dropped it off. She's like, Jake, what you up to? It's February. And I was like, hey grandma, like, I'm dropping out. Like I'm dropping out of college. And I just remember, and then, excuse me if like I get emotional, but like she literally started crying. She's like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing to us? And I just remember like, and because I'm a little prideful, like I'll admit it, like I just remember like, okay, it's time to make it. Like I'm dropping out, like this is what happens, like, and even if it was a little unhealthy, like it was time to prove everyone wrong.
And I think that's one thing, right? Like you've dealt with certain adversities. When people start, the door-to-door industry is what we always reference it. It's sometimes a joke or laughable or you're throwing away opportunity. What are some ways that people can help deal with those adversities as they're going through with families that are objective?
Mm-hmm. The number one thing that I'd say is it's okay to say, hey, this isn't forever, it's just for now. Like I'm not strong enough, 20-year-old Jake is not strong enough to be in an environment where people don't succeed and still succeed.
Yeah. I remember when I first started doing this, door to door, I was selling a different product. And I remember I was going to school and told my parents kind of the same thing. I was like my junior year. I was like, hey, I'm not going back to school anymore. And they was like, what are you going to do? I was like, I'm just going to knock on doors. And they're like, you're crazy. And I'm like, yeah, I am. Right?
Yeah.
And through that, through time, through pressures, through adversity, those types of things, right? It worked out. There's ups and downs. There's emotions that you go through. You've experienced a lot of highs and lows. I've experienced a lot of highs and lows. Our guys experience a lot of highs and lows. But, I always ask myself, I say this all the time, right? Like, I'm now done door to door for, 20 years. Like, am I the smart one or am I the dumb one? And I'm still, not sure which it is, right? But I think as we've evolved, right, from just knocking doors, right? That was your first, let's call it, 2 months. When was the first person that you said, hey, my opportunity has been life-changing, like I'm ready to change someone else's life?
I think it was about 4 months in. I brought someone in, like just one-off people that were like kind of not working, that were like, hey, I want to knock and blah, blah, blah. But the first one I'd say is Justin McKnight. He was selling cars. I think he was making like 150, 200,000 per year.
If you don't know Justin McKnight, you're missing out on a happy, successful individual.
Yep, we'll drop his social media down in the comments. But basically, he was a stud. Like, so Justin McKnight and I went to elementary, middle school, high school, all together. And after school, I remember I went on a mission for my church, and I got back, and Justin and I started sales like the same month. He started selling cars, and I started selling solar. Well, we were watching each other's Instagram, and he was doing all the like Facebook videos of like, hey, come check out my car. And I was just kind of on the down low, like nobody really knew about me. And we talked for like 6 to 8 months about just how we were doing. And I remember he was, to cut it short, like he was like, hey, like how much are you making? And I was like, well, I just made like 40,000 in 1 week. And he's like, wait, I don't even make that in 2-3 months. And so we got together. I was like, hey, come check it out. He's like, no, I have a bonus for 20,000 that I'm waiting 6 months for. Like if I stay till December, they'll give me 20 grand. And I was like, well, why don't you just come make 20 grand this week? So I remember he quit his job. He drove up to Phoenix. He lived with me in my apartment, and he made $20,000 his first week in solar.
Life-changing.
Life-changing. And now you fast forward, right? And now he has, I think, 3 houses, huge stock portfolio. He's married, has a kid on the way. Like, it's crazy. Like, I remember him and his wife literally like moved in with Emma and I, and we just buckled down for like 8 months. And I made my first $1 million, and he made his first $500,000.
No, it's powerful, right? It's powerful. It gets me a little choked up how it works, and also the speed in which it comes, right? So if you look at, if you just look at a small pod, right? We get introduced to each other, you become successful, start selling, having success in the space, you get Justin going, right? I think we went back and said, okay, in 2023, there were like 8 people, right? And then it went to like 30, and then it's, 80, right? Like the process of how it builds exponentially is crazy. Justin's now managing, 30 guys down in Tucson, doing, 15 to 25 accounts a week, and continue to grow and build on the success and things that we've kind of explained to him. So what did the rest of the year look like for you after you came on, started selling, recruited guys? What did the last, let's say, 6 months look like, July through December? What was your work schedule? What were you doing? Like, what was your attitude, the positive and negatives of the solar space?
I remember one thing I read was just like focus on the input versus the output, because there's a solar coaster and it goes up and down and up and down, and it's crazy. So one thing I focused on was just leaving my apartment every day at 8:30 and staying out till 7:30. Like that was my next, and 7:30 was a minimum. So I remember I got this cooler. Like every day I'd pour my ice into the cooler, and I'd put, those little energy drinks. What you introduced me to them? What are they called? Those crazy ones?
Oh, the red lines.
Yeah. So I remember I went on Amazon and I ordered like a case of like 50 red lines and like 50 body armors. And I remember there's like 2 months where every day I just packed 2 of each of those. And I'd knock for 3 hours. I'd pour half a red line, half a body armor into it, and I'd just chug it. And then I just go freaking get 3 leads.
I think they're banned now.
They probably are banned.
I think people are selling too many deals.
And my heart did go a little too fast when I was drinking those. And the crazy thing is if you look at like my frustration was that I dropped out and I was like, guys, I'm gonna make $1 million this year. Well, fast forward 12 months, I only made $500,000. So I think
So were you disappointed?
But no, I wasn't disappointed.
Because what was the alternative to that? You wanted $1 million and made $500,000, and the alternative would have been what?
Dream case scenario, 80,000, 100, which is probably unrealistic in this economy. So, and the crazy thing is I overestimated what I could do in the short term, but I underestimated what I could do in the long term.
So how do you create that paradigm shift? Because so many people in society, inside the space, inside of life, operate from a short-sighted spectacle, right? How do the decisions I make today impact me today, right? This week, right? Very few people forecast out, realizing, the decisions I make today impact a year, 5 years, 10 years from now.
I think the main thing is just delayed gratification.
Explain that. What does that mean, delayed gratification?
So when I first started, so it comes down to this. Like I remember when I first started solar, my friend called me. He's like, hey Jake, like we're going out on Friday, like want to come? And I was just like, no, like I'm sacrificing Friday so that I get paid more next Friday. And I delayed it. I was like, hey, like I'm going to sacrifice almost everything right now so that I can be happy later. And what came with that was like I sacrificed $2,000 a month for retirement. I sacrificed $10,000 a month for my investment account. I have sacrificed $5,000 a month in savings when I could have taken a trip to Park City with all the guys, or to Dubai, wherever it was.
Yeah, I remember about 10 to 12 years ago, we were in California doing security, and one of the guys came in the office and said, in order to be successful, you have to pay the piper. And the way you pay the piper is with sacrifice of time. Right? If you want the things in life that are wealth or opportunity or success or fast cars or big houses, you gotta make sacrifices along the way in order to accomplish that. Because if you don't make that sacrifice of something, right, the gratification like you're talking about, you're never going to be able to accomplish that, right? I can't spend 8 hours with my family and 8 hours working and 8 hours sleeping and 8 hours riding dirt bikes and 8 hours on vacation, and there's only so many hours in a day. And to be able to compartmentalize each of those days, prioritize it, structure it, and then go and execute it, right? Something has to give, right? And we'll talk on future episodes about the buckets of life that we balance and how we structure them and how you learn to manage those to make sure that you're practicing discipline and fulfilling all aspects of your life. I think that's one of the core principles that we talk about a lot is, not just being a good salesman or a good lead setter or a good closer, but being good at all aspects of your life.
And I think that's something that I'm specifically passionate about, that topic of sometimes, it's crazy to say, but sometimes your goals are more important than your friends.
Yeah.
And it sucks. Coming from a 22-year-old who has a bunch of friends that I could hang out, it just sucks. Everyone goes to do stuff and they have fun, but you know what? They're not in a situation that they want to be in now because of their decisions they made a year ago. And the same thing is maybe you can't spend time with your family right now. And so few people are willing to sacrifice that for their success.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, well, it's good to go through this journey again and relive it.
Yeah.
So there'll be more future discussions, I'm sure, as we continue to progress and post these out there. We're talking about a name, right? What are your thoughts on a name?
Our thoughts, we haven't come up with a name yet, but what we want to do is we want to create this podcast so that we can obviously document our journey, but invite all of you to join in and transform your lives. I think we have 3 things, number 1, our core values. Number 1, our transformation. Number 2, integrity. Number 3, family first. And what we want to do is we want to invite all of our audience to go to the comments below and comment names for our podcast that they think would be fitting based on what we went over today. So we appreciate you coming. Thanks for your time. My name was Jake Shumway, and this is Moose Browning.
We'll catch you next time.